Hello and welcome to the first episode of Training Amanda. This will be a new series that focuses on a singular player that I know who is a low to mid-level silver player presently, and we'll follow her improvements and hope to help her out with how to improve, where to focus to help speed that along. So each time through, we're going to look at something new that should be focused on. We may point out little things here and there, but we'll have a central point to get across in the game. We'll look at a couple games to demonstrate where that part is lacking, maybe an example of where it's shone through in a game, and bring up an example showing how to execute what's missing. So a lot of generics there, but basically we're going to say how to improve something. So in this first episode, what we're going to focus on is not actually anything to do with actually playing the game, but what you plan to do while playing the game. The first point that I want to focus on is something when I was looking through these initial batch of replays that really stood out to me, and that is a plan. Now, my idea of a plan is a little different than everyone's favorite, be a better player streamer Day9 suggests, which is an overall plan, which he suggests an overall plan of how you're going to win the game. That is, he often gives an example of, I'm going to get my expand up, get a third, get to Broodlords, kill him with, Infestor Broodlord, for example. I don't think you need to go into quite that much detail, though it is definitely good to have an overall idea of that. I prefer to think of it as an immediate plan. What are you going to do next and why? So, for example, your current plan should fall into one of two categories. One is expand, or two is attack. One of these two, in generic terms, should be your plan at any given moment in a very short-term sense. So if you're not planning on expanding, you need to be planning on attacking. If you're doing neither, then something is wrong. In a more specific sense, you could look at a specific build that you're going to do. I'm going to do this exact build, and that is how I'm going to win. So let's look at this game. First, we'll run through the game very quickly to see what happened, and then we'll look at the specifics of why. So we have Amanda up here in the upper left. We're just going to times 8 this go really through. She is the blue Protoss. Her opponent is FNF. OMG, the red Protoss in the bottom left. You see a scout from both players now going in the wrong direction. Unfortunate for her because that takes a really long time. Hiding over here is a probe, but that's spotted. Very good. Thinking around the base, finding that hidden probe. Does not want to have a toxic bomb on space. You see that FNF OMG goes in for a one gate expand, very dangerous. But Amanda does not get wind of that. If you look, no scary information on that. Builds up a whole bunch of gateway units here. It's down expansion. Here goes the army moving down the map stuff. The watchtower puts down a pylon here, goes in, doesn't go quite their way, and losing all of that army, plus already being behind in economy, just cannot catch up after that. And we see, that doesn't quite go as well as we would have liked. No detection right there, but doesn't matter. Already losing all of her base, pretty much, no coming back. So what happened? Well, my key point here was plan, so let's watch what she does here. Not a whole lot to go over initially, but we'll see. We get a gate, gate, gate. So we get 3 gates before any sort of expansion. Okay. We also get a Twilight Council. Now let's see if we do anything with this Twilight Council. We actually start researching and chrono boosting out charge. So, based on this build order, what's the plan? Well, the plan appears to be to attack with charge. So, here's the big problem. Here, there are several problems with what happens with this plan. We have this probe out on the map, but that just goes into Scout. We actually don't have any proxy pylon. Charge is now done. And then we put down an expansion. So, no proxy pylon plus an expansion is contrary to our plan. Our plan is to attack with charge. And we're not really doing that. Those things are contrary. We still do attack with charge, but it's late, and we're missing a proxy pylon, which makes it even more late. And if we actually watch what happens here, we get the pylon down, but before waiting for it to finish and get another warp-in round down here, or warping in and catching up and then doing a warp-in later, the push-in goes ahead with fewer units. So this extra warp-in are units where it's just only in the opponent's favor. We're not warping in anything, we're just letting them get ahead. So instead of several more zealots, maybe a couple more stalkers, we've got the gas for more stalkers, so we've got charge lots, so we're really focusing on that more than anything. We're just missing more units. What else is contrary here to our plan is that we're banking a lot of gas, and we don't really have anywhere to dump it. Your charge lots in the early game, what's going to support them? You could have sentries. Stalkers can support zealots very well. That's very common, but we're not going to be spending a lot, so we're just banking up too much gas here. But that's not as big of an issue it's not as big of an issue. We're not too focused in this episode. This time around, we're not too focused on getting the perfect macro. We're just having a plan and executing it in a way that makes sense. So with these extra warp-ins, it's actually in our opponent's favor. They've got the better army here. Charge may allow you to land your attacks better and quicker, but if, zealot versus zealot, it doesn't matter if you charge in, right? So we have 9 zealots and then 7. So 9 versus 7. Now what happens is this battle could have gone either way depending on micro, but the reason this went very one-sided in favor of FOMG is that Amanda actually ends up target firing this pylon. I don't know if that was intentional or it was just a misclick. Either way, it was not something that should have been done. There's the engagement here, basically attack, move into each other, and then micro individually based on that, or in clumps, move back the stalkers, kite the zealots, that kind of thing, but focusing down the pylon, no reason to do that, and that's what caused this to go one way. But if we had executed, moved out before charge was finishing, with a proxy pylon in place, with a warp-in on time, to attack just as charge finished, this would have been horribly one-sided in favor of Amanda. Instead, it went completely the other way. This actually still could have been her game in this engagement if it weren't for that misclick. So remember, it's very easy to focus on macro, macro, macro. You should be able to win with pure macro, which is mostly true at these low levels especially. But even minor things in terms of execution can make a huge difference because, again, we are at a lower level. So it's it's good to point out different areas because most can appreciate. There's only so many times you can repeat pylons and probes, though I'm sure that will come up in the future. So that was the main thing in this game. If we actually look at the workers, FNF OMG is ahead in workers. If Chrono Boosts were spent on workers by Amanda, it would probably be even though FNF OMG had that Nexus up first because the Chrono Boost there, as we see 100-100, and 100-100 not being used properly either. But That's more of a macro thing. We're looking at the plan, and the plan didn't make quite a lot of sense. We don't have a specific idea of what we're doing. And not even critiquing the idea of the plan itself. A one-base charge lot is not a standard build in the least, and will fail miserably if you have to go up a ramp, because it can just force field you off. Tal'Darim, not a bad choice for this build, actually, but it's not undoable, and as long as we follow the plan, that's what I'm looking for here. So let's go into another game where there's a bit more clear of a plan, and see it come through, but still see where there may be some hurdles. So let's open up that replay. Get this here. We have a PVT on Entomb. That's not it. There it is. Now each episode I'm going to look for a moment that I particularly like. Doesn't have to have anything to do with the lesson of the day. It just happens to be something that I like, and this game contains it. I'll show you that later. But first, let's run through this very quickly, and again, see what happens, why it happens, where we can improve. So we're seeing over on Warheart, he's got 3 barracks up pretty quickly here. Definitely one-basing this, at least in terms of what the plan looks like for Warheart. Over here we have a similar build coming out here. Actually 3 gates and a forge instead of a twilight here, so we actually get the forge out first. So cannon down here, some pilots down here, puts up a couple of cannons to look at their vision. You can see this is a one-base play, so I can understand why there's a bit of a turtle up, playing very, very, very safely. This is a bit late, even understanding this all incoming, but that's fair enough. Wasn't possibly there, and then into the main, and that did not work out at all. Turns around, runs home. Upon seeing that, there's a warp in. Another warp in, goes for the counterattack, 2 bunkers up, not the best engagement, has to run by, that just did not work out, and that really hurt now. The supply swings back the other way. There's now a 3rd base up, more gateways down. We have a Twilight Council. Lots of sentries here, but lots of DCs clean that up. Go, back. So this has gone back and forth. Tons of Archons now showing up in the fray. Poke in, move back. Moves out, and now we move into a bit of space Mario. And it takes out the natural, going to take up the main. We have Warheart moving back. Takes out all of these Archons with some units to spare, but has lost its natural main. Now he's going to try and counterattack, kills off the army, and that is just about that. Calls in GG. That's it. So that one went in Amanda's favor. Now the plan in this game, in general, was build up a Zealot Archon army and attack. Charge a lot of Archon. That's what we were looking at in this game. Now that plan got messed up. That can happen. Our opponent went for a 1-base all-in, so we had to kind of delay that, be a bit more safe. Still got the expansion up, but played safe, got extra defenses, played back, got defensive units like sentries, made sure we could hold it, and then continued with our plan. As long as you get back to that plan, it's fine. You just have to have that to put you back on track. Have that idea in mind. You can actually change midway through, but that's in terms of what you've seen, and that's important, but it's very difficult. So it's best to try and wrap it around your original concept and make that work. It is the simplest way to look at it. Sometimes the plan may never come up. If someone just, worker rushes you, probably not going to make it to your plan. Um, but that's okay. It's the overall game plan that's going to get you to win if your opponent doesn't give it to you or force the issue. So that was the overall idea in this game. How was that executed? Well, as I was saying, this was a little late. You normally want to get this, if you're past 7 minutes putting this down, you're late on an expansion. That's pretty late. This was down at about 9 minutes, so that's really, really late. Something else to consider is the vast, vast, vast majority of people on ladder, until you get to a very high level, have a singular basic plan. They have one idea, and that's it. They may continue playing after that, but it's going to be much worse and much less effective. For example, the easiest example is some sort of cheese. I'm going to cannon rush, and if that doesn't work, well, I'm screwed. Is basically how it works out. If you defeat that initial plan that your opponent has, you're very, very likely to win. So if your opponent is planning on, proxy barracks, you kill those units, you don't die to it, you're probably going to win. If your opponent's going for Doom Drop, you just have to beat that Doom Drop. Normally there isn't much of a follow-up. Until you get to a higher level, a much higher level, you really don't have multi-layered plans where I'm going to take a quick expand, going to pressure into a third in order to get the late game tech while dropping, while teching. It's much more, until you have to get really far before you get to that complicated of an idea. Normally, all the way up to masters, you're going to have, I'm going to do my quick expand build into 10-minute medevac Marine Marauder pressure, and then build up bio and hope for the best. Normally, if that initial push doesn't do damage, if you shut that down, that player's dead. Is basically how it works. So if you don't have a coherent plan to begin with, if you're just skipping right to the part where your plan has already been defeated, you're already defeating yourself. Now we actually see in this game, Warheart's plan is basically going to go one base medevac into drop. It's unclear if he originally planned on dropping. It may have actually been that. Actually, let's watch. Let's watch Warheart's position. Going to go one base Marine Marauder medevac. Push out.
Research.
Slow down here. Actually, immediately. Oh, okay. Actually, when did he get vision of that? Sorry here. Actually had that vision for a long time. So, yeah, looks like he was just planning on dropping right into the main.
Research.
That didn't work out. And there really wasn't much of a follow-up. It's like, I guess I better expand now. Now, if we look at Amanda's side of things, after that, let's skip ahead to after we crush this push. Keep in mind, this Twilight Council is up. I get in charge. We're also looking at ways we can expand our plan to make it flow better. Notice here we don't yet have any way to go into Archon, so we're delaying that by quite a bit. We're getting ground weapons instead of ground armor. And typically, if you're going a Zealot heavy composition, you get the armor upgrades first. They're much better in PvP. Okay, just to clarify that, because the Zealots tank a lot of damage, and they're going to kill the Marines very quickly anyway, while adding on the extra armor makes it so the Marines have to take a lot more shots to kill those Zealots. So usually the actual armor helps more. But here comes another attack. That did not work out. Notice that this was affected by not following the plan. This was reacting to the earlier mess up of it. So when this push happened, they just kind of arbitrarily decided, I'm just going to attack. Forget the plan. Just going to attack. And that put this in a very dangerous situation. The supply went from, let's see, before and after here. So we're at even supply, it looks like. 79.75, and then being down 20 supply about. So that really did not work out. So why doesn't it work out? Well, it could have. The response was very slow to killing that off. You have to keep in mind why you had the plan that you did in the first place. Why were you going Zealot Archon? Why would that work? And why would you use that specifically as opposed to the army that you just attacked with? Well, it's because Zealots tank a lot of damage, and charge helps them close the distance in order to deal a lot of damage. Archons do splash damage, so they do good damage to large chunks of units. That, as well as they can eat up a lot of gas. Because Zealots are mineral heavy, so Archons can be gas heavy. It's a good balance of your resources to spend everything. So that's why that is a good composition. It doesn't work across the board the entire game, higher levels, but just going in generals here. So that's why that works. But then we attacked in with Zealot, Stalker, Sentry, and just sort of attack moved into bunkers and bio, and that did not work. So you have to account for how changing the plan affects what the outcome could be. Like, why did you do that? Why were you doing the original plan in the first place? That kind of thing. So now we're getting more back on track. Now we went in for DTs instead of Archons and kind of got forced into this engagement. Fortunately, the Terran does not have force fields. Could have been much, much, much better there. Losing a whole bunch of sentries for pretty much free. No Guardian Shields or anything. So this engagement could have gone a lot better. Let's watch that again. Speed ahead. Okay, so we see this big ball of units. To be honest, this should go the favor of the Terran with good control. But the league that we're in, it probably would go the way of the Protoss. Now what you want to do here is you want the Zealots to attack, you want the sentries to slice this in half and put up Guardian Shields and attack from a distance. So what happens here is we have everything just sort of attack move in. We only got one force field going, so we don't get any much. I'm not sure what that was. I'm not sure what that was. Now, I don't know if you noticed that, but there was a bit of a problem in over micro here. Let's watch this in normal speed. This doesn't have to do with the plan, but I'm just going to focus on it because it is a common thing at low levels to make this mistake. Okay, so we have, notice these are running around. What's happening? Why aren't these attacking? Because there is actually an attack move on to an individual unit. Do not target fire units unless you have a very, very particular and specific reason to do so. If you have a big ball of units, and your opponent has a big ball of units, you should just attack move towards them, not onto a specific unit. You should not be target firing units most of the time. There are specific instances where you do, like microing back Stalkers against Zealots. You focus fire down individual Zealots to do it quicker since you're not one-shotting them. But these are in very small engagements. If you have a big engagement, if you focus fire everything onto one unit, that's all your firepower going in one direction while your opponent spreads out a ton of damage across all your units. and will deal damage much more effectively. So it's too complicated of a micro task to do that at this level. Just attack move towards them, and then do micro, like add force fields after that. Specific little things like that. So that got killed off. So we still haven't really gotten to our side of the plan. I move in here, there's a turret that's turning around. That's good, got out of there. That's one of the things also, is to clarify the difference between an attack and a pressure. A pressure means you'll push out with units, and you'll be willing to engage if the engagement looks favorable, but you have to be willing to pull back. If you're planning on committing to an attack, you have to be willing to commit outright. Because if you're doing a pressure, your goal is to accomplish something else. For example, you pressure and do an expand. Make them afraid to move out so you can expand safely. That's a simple idea. If you're doing any sort of attack, it doesn't necessarily have to be entirely all in, but your plan is to commit to it. And in that case, the outcome that you want is damage. You're intending on doing damage. That is your result that you want. You aren't trying to get something else to happen. You aren't trying to expand behind an attack. You don't want to expand behind an attack, because if it doesn't do enough damage, you're just dead if you expand during that, as opposed to being able to hold maybe on the bases that you already have. So here you could consider this a pressure. This is not the army that we want to go kill them with, but we're just going to pressure, because we killed off so much, see if we can do a little bit of damage, see that we can't, and turn around. That was well executed. That's what we want to see in terms of a pressure. So let's bring this back on track now. So we lost a bunch of units, he lost a bunch of units. What was our plan? Our plan was Zealot Archon. So we have a bunch of these DTs. We can merge those into Archons. And now we have a bunch of Archons. We have a bunch of Zealots. We're spending our resources very low, very good. And now we're getting ready to attack. Now, I don't know the thought process in that case, whether or not there was an intent to commit or not. But being on 3 bases, we don't have to commit to an attack. We know our opponent is on 2 bases. We have a scout around looking for hidden bases. That's very good. So we know 2 base. That is it. We're on 3 base, so we're in a better position. The longer the game goes on, the better position we are in. So I approve of this adjustment from attack to pressure. Now this attack, we're a bit out of position here, so the attack doesn't do a third. I'm not sure that going into a base race is the best idea, because it's not a good idea. Now we lose that army, but we've killed everything that he has. So now we know that pretty much he's all in now to killing us, or doing like massive damage. So if we can hold this, pretty much, if we hold this, we win now. So our plan has reached its fruition. Now we have to just see what the situation is to finish the game. We reached our plan, it did its damage. Now we just have to hold, and now we get to watch the best part of this game. So here comes the Terran army moving out. Amanda's army right here goes in, and bam! Force fields cutting that army perfectly in half, and then cutting off as it tries to come around again. Just perfectly done right there. You can see better force field than MC himself. Cleaning up that army, and that is that. Those force fields were perfect there. That's my favorite part out of any of these games today. That is really well done right there. So that is definitely a highlight and something we like. So this game has gone better. It went in Amanda's favor. We saw following of a plan. It got away from us at one point where we decided to just kind of trail away from the plan and just sort of attack with whatever we had, and that didn't go in our favor. So that is one situation where we didn't follow it, and that hurt us, but getting back on track, it worked out. So we want to follow our plan, have it in mind, and follow it to the best of our ability. Now, the last thing I'll add in this game is the idea of expanding our plan and making it a bit more robust. If our idea is Zealot Archon, well, we have two options in terms of how to get Archons. One, our Dark Templar, and two, our High Templar. There are advantages to each. High Templar will mesh a little better with Zealots because High Templar are 50 minerals, 150 gas, versus 125 for Dark Templar. So they cost more gas and less minerals, which will allow us a better balance where Zealots are all minerals and no gas. So that balances a little better, as well as High Templar transition a bit better into the late game with Storm, if you're adding in Colossi into a better Death Ball. DTs, which you'll find are Amanda's favorite, have alternate uses themselves. You can use them for harass and map control, as well as they are less gas, so they allow you to tech a bit more, even though they are more minerals. Or alternatively, they could allow you to get a few more Archons out. Usually you're more gas starved than mineral starved. So those are advantages to Dark Templar. So just assuming we're going Dark Templar, because that seems to be her preference, what else could we be doing with Dark Templar? Well, once we get them out, we could send one in to see if we can do some harass. We often see her get an Observer. The robotics facility isn't necessary, but the Observer is nice. You could alternatively go, since we are getting sentries, go with Hallucination and Hallucinated Phoenixes for scouting. So either way, we could scout ahead and see if they have any static defense to give detections, missile turrets basically, and try, or depending on, if you're in a different matchup and doing the same kind of idea, spore crawlers or cannons, if they have any of those up. If they don't, you can try and run one in. Typically, when you're doing harass with Dark Templar, you want to run them, separate them, particularly with Terrans. So if they scan, for example, if you have a DT in the natural and a DT in the main, they have to scan twice because they can't get them both with one scan. So you could harass with them. After that, you can leave a Dark Templar outside of their base, so anytime they move out, they'll be attacked by a Dark Templar. It'll tell you that they're coming. It will do a little bit of damage. You will scare them from moving out, and it will cost them a scan to move out. So that's a lot of things in mind that you can be doing with Dark Templars. You can have them control watchtowers, are very good. So there's a lot of alternate utility there that we could be doing. But for the most part, obviously, we want to follow our plan. So the last game we're going to look at is a game that I played to demonstrate following through on a particular plan. Now, as Protoss, I named Zerg as Protoss. I'm only high platinum. But we're just trying to show how we can follow a plan and how that can work out for us. So let's just go here. Where is that? Oh, shoot. Just a second here. Oh, shoot. Okay, well, this will be part 1. I'll be right back with part 2 to show you the last game and then close up.